This is an unusual bow hold trick that I love giving to my students because it really helps them understand the relationship between each finger and what each finger is supposed to do for the bow hold if you go from the tip to the frog. So typically when you hold a bow, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in its Franco-Belgian form. All the fingers nice and curved. What's excellent about this weird violin bow hold trick is that you are teaching your hand on the placement of the fingers. So generally, I actually recommend, similarly to what in my other violin videos, that you want your fingers to be vertical like this, so that way you can understand where each finger is going, particularly the thumb, which I'm tapping right over here. You want all the fingers to be bent, and you want the first little line here touching the stick. This is going to be really great. Now, this is very similar to how you would practice with a pencil, actually, without the frog. So this is probably the equivalent width of a pencil where the tip is here. And of course, I would not suggest holding the bow on its own this way because you could actually shatter your stick if it's a wooden bow. So if you're practicing this exercise, always hold the bow with the other hand and hold it this way. This is what it looks like, which is quite weird. It looks unnatural, but when you start holding the bow vertically this way, you're gonna realize that there are some things that you may be doing with your bow hold that you really didn't know before. You could notice like maybe your thumb is pressing and maybe it's causing other fingers to resort in a certain way. And once you have figured out how to hold the bow via the tip of the bow, I want you to gently place the bow on the string. And you're going to see how much of a difference it is. And you're going to do your best to pull the string, not press or squeeze. You're going to try to pull the string this way. And this is one excellent way. So this is another way that you can do it from this angle. And you may notice that there's actually a little bit of bumpiness in the bow. That's probably because I'm not used to practicing the bow this way, and I actually have to reevaluate how I'm holding my bow. So I'm going to try this a little slower. I'm going to reduce the amount of bumpiness in my bow. Here it is. Now, it is natural to have a bit of bumpiness in this area. We call this the balance point. This is where if you're to put a finger right over here, let me just balance the bow out a little bit. This is the typical balance point of a bow, right over here. So it is natural that if you're doing this exercise and you start experiencing some shaking here, that's normal. That's okay. Because you're not doing this every single day. This is just one weird violin trick to help you figure out whether or not you're on the right track with your bow hold. So you want to do long bows as smoothly as possible and on each string. And on the D string. And on the G string. And what you'll notice is that you are going to be getting a lot more grip. And the third tip that I'm going to give in this video, you want to stick around because it actually relates to that. The second trick that I like to show my students is the 1 minute bow. It's exactly what it sounds like. You hold a down bow or an up bow for exactly 60 seconds. And you are trying to hold a clear sound for 60 seconds. And you are trying to actually time out how much bow you need throughout the 60 seconds. This is an excellent game that I like to give my students, whether they're young or whether they're an adult student. It gives them a chance to figure out how much bow they're actually using. Sometimes they can't even reach 20 seconds. They're like, oh my gosh, this is how I'm using my bow. This is a great kind of wake-up call as to how you can control your bow with a really good sound and how much bow you can use. So again, the demonstration, very simple. You do this on the down bows and the up bows, and each person has a different tendency, and that's what you can use as a reference when you're practicing at home, preferably in front of a mirror. So when you do a down bow, you're also trying to learn how to control your nerves. So the way to do this exercise, you don't want any type of scratchy sound like this, or you don't want any bouncing bow. If you're experiencing a bouncy bow during this exercise, I recommend maybe relaxing the thumb a little bit. I have found that has worked for me in the past. So you can relax your shoulder. This is your right shoulder here, and relax the elbow a little bit so that way your hand is nice and natural. And you are going to go very slowly, and you're trying to get a complete sound. Now I'm not going to do a 60-second bow just for the sake of this video, but you can do this on the down bows and the up bows. And you'll find that the up bows tend to be a lot harder because you are going against gravity. So when you're going against gravity, you kind of have to change your muscles, change your bow hold a little bit to compensate for that. And you're going to be going very, very slowly on the up bow. And then you'll notice that once you pass middle bow, it's going to be a lot harder because you're going to a heavier part of the stick. And you have to try making the transition very smooth. And there should be no break in sound whatsoever. And while you're working on all of this, this actually happens to be a bow hold issue. You know, on the channel, I've talked about addressing violin issues, whether they are a left hand issue or a right hand issue. And usually bow holds are right hand issue. And if you're wanting to learn more about bow holds, I actually have a course on bow holds. There are a lot of violin tutorial videos on this channel, but if you want something that's a little bit more organized and structured, I recommend that you click down on the link below in the description to take a look at the bow hold course. And for first-time learners, I'm offering 15% off. Just use the promo code VIOLINSTART at checkout. Now, for the third element of a weird violin trick that works in the practice room is the click. What the heck is a click, right? So you're trying to grip the bow on the string. Did you hear that click? You're trying to get a tiny little click right there. And you're only trying to get one click at a time. But you don't want to do that. But you want to try on every string, to give you a closer look, like that. And on the G string, like that. There you go. So that's the G string. And then try to do it on the E string. The E string is a little tougher actually than the other strings because you're trying to redistribute the weight and the pulling of the right hand. The way to accomplish this is using your ring finger and actually using more of that part of the hand. Don't try to pull the bow with the index finger because you're going to find that you're going to be using more clicks there. So I'm going to try that one more time on the A string, like right there, and on the D string. There it is, and then the G string, and then on the E string. Now here's a bird's eye view of this exact same exercise. Now you're going to notice the shape of my hand is very important and I'm not pressing into the string as I'm doing this one click exercise. I'm actually pulling the string using all my fingers, but particularly I'm using my ring finger to help balance out the weight distribution of my hand to actually get that click. The point of that particular exercise is to help redistribute the weight across your hand. Now, it is very useful for you if you know how to hold the bow. So that's why I started out with the first weird exercise when we start holding the bow at the tip of the bow versus the frog, where we're normally used to holding the bow. But once you've established that feeling in the tip, you go over to the frog and then you learn how to actually hold the Franco-Belgian bow hold properly. I can't stress that enough because usually a lot of the sound problems you may be experiencing is a result of the bow hold. Now, if you're learning about violin and you come across this channel, my name is Eric and I am dedicated to helping you become a better violinist. I also have some other helpful violin tutorials on the channel.